The allegations Meghan has made are simply not true. Her account does not reflect what actually happened, and it has led the public to a deeply misleading impression. That version of events has no basis in...
The answer arrived without ceremony. No private telephone call. No sympathetic warning. Just a sealed palace letter placed before Meghan, carrying a decision that struck at the most emotionally charged name in the modern monarchy. She had requested access to Diana's private collection. The palace refused, but the true shock was not simply that the door had been closed. It was that newly unsealed records revealed precisely who had ordered it closed and why. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Meghan stared at the final paragraph until the words hardened before her. Palace archivists had denied her request to examine Diana's private collection after sealed custodial records were opened for review. A custodial record is the official file explaining who may control or examine sensitive personal material. The refusal covered private letters, handwritten journals, jewelry records, recorded reflections, clothing inventories, and confidential correspondence kept outside the public royal collection, the body managing historic objects connected to the crown. She had not asked to walk freely through the archive. Meghan's application argued that, as Harry's wife and the mother of Diana's grandchildren, she should receive limited, supervised access to the late princess's personal legacy. To her, the request concerned family memory. To the palace, it risked allowing private material to enter charity work, media discussion, or public storytelling. Meghan lowered the letter, then lifted it again. One sentence cut deeper. Marriage into Diana's family created no automatic right of access. She read it twice, her jaw tightening each time. When Prince Harry entered, she said nothing. He saw the document, recognized the palace seal, and felt anger rise before reaching the final page. The Duke understood that the ruling did more than exclude his wife. It suggested that even his connection to his mother remained governed by restrictions written years earlier. Harry turned to the newly unsealed instruction and stopped. Diana's most private effects had never been intended as a general family archive. Named custodians held responsibility, while direct descendants could enter only under defined conditions. Then came the handwritten restriction. No spouse of either son could independently inspect the collection or use its contents for personal, commercial, charitable, or public narratives. Inside the secure archive, a senior custodian received confirmation, turned a brass key, and closed the door. The click suddenly sounded final. Yet Harry noticed one line that changed everything. The decision cited a confidential incident that occurred before Meghan submitted her application. To understand that hidden incident, the story must move beyond the locked archive and into the private relationships now being tested by Diana's name. Diana's collection was not merely a group of possessions. To Harry, it represented a mother he lost before he fully understood her. To William, it carried a responsibility he had guarded in silence. To Meghan, it offered a connection to the woman whose public suffering had often been compared with her own. And to Catherine, it was a legacy she had approached with restraint. Now those four relationships were colliding behind one locked door. Harry could not accept that his mother had been reduced to public photographs, old interviews, and memories repeated by people who had never truly known her. The private archive felt different. An archive is a protected collection of original records, letters, recordings, and personal material preserved under strict control. To him, it was one of the last places where Diana still existed beyond public mythology. He believed grief should carry more authority than palace rank, and that emotional connection should matter more than rules written by distant officials. William saw the same collection in a completely different way. He had quietly accepted the burden of protecting its most sensitive contents, not as a prize inherited by the family, but as a private trust. A trust is a legal arrangement requiring chosen custodians to protect property or records for specific people and purposes. The prince feared that one careless release could expose his mother's private pain, distort her intentions, and leave his own children carrying consequences they never chose. Meghan felt the refusal cutting deeper with every hour. She told Harry that the decision was not really about papers, jewelry lists, or recordings. It was about belonging. In her mind, the palace had once again decided that she could stand near the family, but never fully enter it. The rejection seemed to confirm that blood, hierarchy, and silent approval mattered more than marriage, motherhood, or loyalty. Catherine received a confidential briefing at Kensington Palace and immediately understood the danger. Kensington Palace is a royal residence and working base used by senior members of the family. She learned that her own limited access to Diana's belongings might soon be used to create a bitter comparison between two royal wives. Catherine closed the folder and warned William that his mother's memory must never become a weapon against Meghan. He answered quietly that protecting Diana was not the same as punishing the woman making the request. The records complicated everything. Catherine had once viewed only 3 carefully selected items before a family commemoration, and William had remained beside her throughout. Meghan, however, had requested entire categories of private correspondence and recorded material, including documents neither son had examined without an archivist present. Harry still saw unequal treatment. His anger hardened into a decision. Before confronting William, he demanded the truth about the confidential incident that had caused the palace to tighten every rule. The answer led back to one private gathering, one unexpected request, and the moment Diana's archive entered dangerous territory. Months before the refusal became public, the royal family gathered for what was meant to be a quiet memorial discussion. There were no cameras, no formal speeches, and no expectation of conflict. Yet before the evening ended, Diana's name had divided the room. A single request made across a polished table, while William remained silent, caused an archivist to record an emergency concern. From that night forward, Meghan's future access to the private collection was no longer treated as a family matter. Harry and Meghan had joined William and Catherine to discuss a future charitable tribute to Diana. A senior archivist also attended, carrying responsibility for the late princess's personal papers. An archivist is a specialist, trusted to preserve sensitive records and control who may examine them. The meeting had one narrow purpose: choosing approved photographs and public quotations that could be used without disturbing anything private. Meghan listened as the permitted material was reviewed, but then she asked a question that changed the tone instantly. She wanted to know whether excerpts from Diana's unpublished audio reflections could be used in a documentary about women confronting hostile institutions. The recordings had never been offered. Their existence had not been part of the discussion. William stopped writing. He placed his pen on the table and asked who had told her those recordings existed. His voice remained controlled, but the restraint carried more force than anger. Meghan answered that the idea had emerged during early conversations with advisors. She believed Diana's experiences could help millions of women who felt trapped, judged, or silenced. Harry moved quickly to defend her. He said his wife was proposing a tribute, not an exploitation. Then the deeper resentment surfaced. The Duke accused William of behaving as though their mother's voice belonged to him alone. He argued that grief did not become more legitimate simply because one brother remained closer to the palace. Catherine watched the future king's expression harden. She understood that the argument had moved beyond one documentary. William told Meghan that unpublished pain was not public property, even when the intentions sounded compassionate. Diana had recorded those reflections without knowing they might one day be placed inside someone else's narrative. The senior archivist said little, but after the meeting ended, he prepared an emergency custodial note. A custodian is the person formally responsible for protecting valuable or confidential material. The note recorded that a family member had shown interest in using restricted audio for an external media project. That single entry triggered an immediate review. Within 48 hours, William approved a temporary freeze. Spouses, producers, representatives, charitable partners, and communications advisors were barred from seeking unsupervised access to Diana's private material. Meghan was never told the freeze began with her suggestion. She discovered it only when the unsealed records placed William's signature beneath the restriction. At that moment, the conflict stopped being about archivists. It became a battle between brothers. Harry did not ask for a meeting through secretaries. He went directly to William. Behind a closed door, with no cameras and no public statements to soften the moment, the brothers faced the wound they had avoided naming for years. One believed their mother's memory was being guarded so tightly that even her son could no longer reach it. The other believed that without firm boundaries, Diana's most private suffering would eventually be turned into material for public consumption. Harry insisted that no aides, lawyers, or communications officials enter the room. He had found William's authorization beneath the archive restriction, and he wanted answers from his brother, not carefully prepared language from the palace. Kensington Palace, a royal residence and working base for senior members of the family, suddenly became the setting for a confrontation far more personal than any official dispute. Harry accused William of building the policy around suspicion of Meghan. He said the rule looked neutral only on paper, while its real purpose was to keep his wife away from anything connected to Diana. The Duke believed the palace had decided Meghan was dangerous before giving her request a fair hearing. William rejected that accusation. He explained that the restriction applied to every spouse and existed to protect their mother from posthumous exploitation, the use of a dead person's life, words, or suffering without their consent. The prince argued that Diana's private thoughts could not defend themselves once removed from their original meaning. Harry's restraint broke first. He told his brother that he had turned their mother into an institution, catalogued, guarded, and trapped behind locked doors and palace committees. Diana, he insisted, would never have wanted her sons to seek permission before reaching the most personal parts of her memory. William's voice sharpened. He reminded Harry that their mother had also feared being misquoted, interpreted, and exposed by people who claimed to understand her pain. Protecting her silence, he said, was not betrayal, it was a duty. Harry pushed Meghan's refusal letter across the table. William left it untouched. Instead, he placed Diana's original custodial instruction beside the application. A custodial instruction is a written order defining how protected possessions or records must be handled. Then he added a third document. The attachment came from an external media consultant. It described possible educational, charitable, and documentary uses for anything discovered inside the archive. Harry read the memorandum slowly. He had believed Meghan wanted a supervised personal viewing. The document suggested something much broader. Confusion replaced part of his anger. But William did not soften. Meghan was family, he said, yet Diana's private voice would never become part of a media strategy, while he remained responsible for protecting it. Harry left carrying the memorandum. But William's signature was not the only authority behind the refusal. An older power had approved it, and that approval made the restriction almost impossible to overturn. William had signed the restriction, but he had not created the power behind it. Diana's private collection was protected by a chain of custodianship, built to survive family pressure, public fascination, and changing royal relationships. At the center of that chain stood King Charles, a man forced to confront the private remains of a marriage that had shaped and scarred the monarchy. His decision would determine whether the refusal remained an archival ruling or became a sovereign command. Charles understood that no single relative could simply open the archive. A private family trust controlled the collection, professional archivists guarded the records, and a final royal custodian held authority over exceptional access. A trust is a legal structure created to protect property or documents under fixed rules. Every level had to agree before sensitive material could be released, which meant even a prince could not force the door open through emotion alone. Harry still believed his father could change everything. As monarch and Diana's former husband, the king could approve an exceptional review if he accepted that Meghan's request was personal rather than commercial. That hope drew the Duke back into the palace, carrying the consultant's memorandum and the refusal he had already challenged once. Charles received the complete file alone. Meghan's application lay beside William's restriction, Diana's custodial instruction, and the document outlining possible documentary use. The monarch reached the handwritten page bearing his former wife's signature and stopped. He removed his glasses, lowered his head, and remained silent. Those words came from a life filled with affection, humiliation, resentment, and pain. Both had suffered. Both had caused suffering. Now one of them could no longer explain what she meant. Harry entered, and spoke without anger at first. He asked his father to imagine being denied contact with the remaining pieces of his mother's inner world. He said grief had followed him through every stage of his life, while the palace continued deciding how close he could stand to the woman he had lost. Charles listened until his son finished. Then he folded his hands over the application. Grief, he said, could explain why someone asked for access, but it could not erase boundaries established by the person who left the material behind. Diana's pain did not become family property simply because the family still carried it. Camilla knew the decision was being made, yet the queen consort refused to enter the discussion. Her absence was deliberate. She understood that any intervention from her would revive old accusations and make the ruling appear rooted in rivalry rather than protection. Charles finally signed the custodial confirmation. Meghan would receive no access under the current request, and no appeal would be heard while outside media use remained possible. The order was now final inside the palace. But when Harry carried it home, Meghan no longer saw one locked archive. She saw an entire family standing behind the door. The palace had reached its verdict, but the deepest damage unfolded far from its stone corridors. Harry returned with the final confirmation and placed it before Meghan without explanation. She needed only one glance at the signature. What followed was not a dramatic explosion, but something more painful. Two people realizing they had understood the same request differently. He thought she wanted a private connection to Diana. The palace believed she wanted access with a future public purpose. Harry set down the signed custodial confirmation beside the consultant's memorandum. A custodial confirmation is the final written approval that enforces how protected records must be handled. Meghan immediately understood what those papers meant. William had read the application. Charles had examined the attached proposal. Every intention, every phrase, and every possible future use had been judged behind doors she could not enter. Meghan told her husband that the memorandum had never been a promise to create a commercial project. She had included it to show how Diana's experiences might support charitable work and help women who felt crushed by powerful institutions. To her, public benefit proved responsibility. To the palace, it proved risk. Harry admitted that he had believed the request was simpler. He thought Meghan wanted a supervised encounter with a few personal objects, something private and emotional. The Duke had not understood that the application covered entire categories of correspondence, recordings, and material that might later support a documentary. Meghan's hurt sharpened. She asked why he had not defended that difference more forcefully. The royal family, she said, had chosen the darkest interpretation because it had never trusted her. She could survive another rejection from the palace. What she could not bear was hearing doubt in Harry's voice. He said he had defended her. Then he hesitated. The external proposal, he confessed, made the request almost impossible to separate from future publicity. That pause wounded Meghan more deeply than the king's signature. Meghan slowly removed her wedding ring. She turned it between her fingers and placed it beside the refusal letter. The gesture was not a threat to leave. It was an admission that the conflict had entered their marriage and settled between them. Harry stepped outside and gripped the terrace railing. Protecting his wife and protecting his mother's privacy had become opposing demands, and either choice felt like betrayal. Then Meghan noticed a smaller sealed envelope inside the returned file. Catherine had written to her after the final ruling. The Princess of Wales requested a private meeting without aides, lawyers, or husbands. She believed Meghan could still honor Diana without entering the restricted archive. Meghan nearly tore the note in half. Instead, she read it again and agreed. The next shift would not come from a monarch, a prince, or an archivist, but from two women finally speaking without anyone else defining what Diana meant to them. There were no secretaries in the room, no palace folders between them, and no husbands directing the conversation. Catherine arrived carrying only a small velvet case. Meghan expected another defense of royal procedure. Instead, the princess placed the case on the table and admitted that she, too, had once feared being measured against a woman she had never met. For the first time since the rejection, Diana's legacy was discussed not as property or power, but as an emotional burden inherited by everyone around her sons. Catherine made one condition clear before they began. Nothing said between them would be passed to advisors, family representatives, or the press. Meghan agreed. The silence that followed felt uncomfortable, but honest. No one was there to translate their words into palace language, or turn their pain into strategy. Meghan asked the question that had followed her since the refusal. Why had Catherine been allowed near Diana's possessions, while she had been treated as a threat? The princess answered without hesitation. She had never received unrestricted access. Every item had been chosen for a specific family purpose, and William had remained present throughout. A supervised viewing meant that approved material could be examined only under controlled conditions, never freely or independently. Meghan listened, yet the explanation did not erase the deeper wound. She said the rejection had confirmed her fear that Harry's family would always see her as temporary, dangerous, or useful only when she remained silent. Her intentions seemed to matter less than the suspicions surrounding her name. Catherine did not defend the palace. Instead, she confessed something she had rarely admitted aloud. Marrying William had meant living beside the memory of a woman the world still idealized. The comparison never disappeared. She had survived it only by refusing to claim Diana's story as her own. Then Catherine opened the velvet case. Inside was a simple copy of a public photograph showing Diana during a visit to a women's refuge. On the reverse, the princess had written one message: meaningful work did not require access to private suffering. Public courage could be honored without exposing hidden pain. Meghan looked at the photograph and asked whether Catherine had come merely to make defeat easier to accept. The princess said no. She had come to offer another path. Catherine proposed a joint charitable initiative supporting women rebuilding their lives after public trauma. It would use Diana's established humanitarian record, but none of her unpublished letters, recordings, or private possessions. The work could carry her spirit without taking ownership of her voice. For the first time, Meghan understood that access and connection were not the same. She agreed to withdraw the disputed application. But the private breakthrough came too late to remain private. The unsealed records had already reached the press, and the world was preparing to decide who had been wrong. At dawn, the dispute ceased to belong to the family. Across Britain, headlines reduced years of grief, fear, and guarded memory to a single brutal conflict. Meghan wanted entry, and the palace said no. Supporters saw exclusion. Critics saw entitlement. Yet amid the noise, one image captured the deeper reality: a locked archive door beneath Diana's name, guarded not against one woman, but against anyone who might turn private pain into public property. Extracts from the unsealed custodial file spread across British and international outlets within hours. A custodial file is the official record explaining who controls protected material and under what conditions it may be examined. The documents revealed Meghan's application, William's restriction, Charles's final confirmation, and Diana's written rule denying independent access to either son's spouse. Commentators immediately divided the story into opposing camps. Some described Meghan as a grieving daughter-in-law denied a meaningful connection to the woman who had shaped Harry's life. Others argued that the palace had prevented confidential letters and recordings from becoming material for a future documentary. The truth was quieter, but the headlines were louder. One London newspaper captured the public mood with a front page showing a closed archive door beneath the words, "Diana's Last Boundary." Outside Buckingham Palace, a woman held the paper silently before television cameras, while crowds gathered behind the barriers. Buckingham Palace is the monarch's principal official residence and the symbolic center of royal authority. That single image turned a private dispute into a national argument about consent. At Kensington Palace, visitors placed white roses near the gates. Kensington Palace is a royal residence closely associated with Diana and later with William's family. The cards beside the flowers did not attack Meghan or praise the institution. They carried one simple message: let her words remain hers. Slowly, the debate began to shift away from rivalry and toward the late princess's right to privacy. Harry watched the coverage with the television muted. Every broadcaster spoke about his mother, yet none could ask her what she wanted. When details from Meghan's application appeared on screen, the Duke looked away. The battle for access had already exposed more than he ever intended. Meghan's advisors prepared a forceful response, accusing the palace of selective exclusion. She read the draft, crossed out its most aggressive paragraph, and refused to deepen the conflict using Diana's name. Instead, she sent written confirmation withdrawing the application in full. Then Meghan and Catherine approved a joint announcement. Their charitable initiative would honor Diana's public humanitarian work, while leaving every private letter, recording, and possession sealed. The storm began to settle, but one final judgment remained. William and Harry still had to decide whether protecting their mother's boundaries had cost them what remained of their bond. In the end, no one entered the private collection. No hidden recording was released. No confidential letter became a headline. The door remained closed, but the meaning of that closure changed. It was no longer simply Meghan's rejection, William's authority, Harry's anger, or Charles's command. It became something the family had nearly forgotten during the fight. Diana had left behind not only memories and possessions, but boundaries. Respecting her required accepting that even love does not grant unlimited access. Meghan formally withdrew her application, and the palace confirmed that no further review would take place. The collection remained governed by its original custodial rules, meaning the written protections controlling who could examine sensitive material and under what conditions. Catherine's charitable initiative moved forward instead. built around Diana's publicly documented causes rather than unpublished letters, private recordings, or personal possessions. Meghan told Harry that the refusal still hurt, yet she no longer believed access to the archive could prove whether she belonged. The Duchess accepted that Diana's private history could not be used to validate her own place within the family. Harry listened, then admitted that grief had shaped his anger. Every restriction had felt like another attempt to take his mother away, but he finally understood that protecting what she withheld mattered just as much as celebrating what she shared. William met Harry privately beside a cabinet holding approved family photographs. The prince placed Diana's custodial instruction between them, then closed the folder without demanding agreement. Harry said the palace had judged Meghan too harshly. William accepted that the process had caused pain, but he refused to let their mother's private voice settle a modern family conflict. The brothers reached one final agreement. Neither their wives, advisors, foundations, nor future media projects would use restricted material. Any later review would belong only to Diana's direct descendants, and would remain bound by the protections she had written. Charles then ordered the unsealed administrative records preserved beside the collection. The king wanted future generations to understand that the refusal had come from Diana's own boundaries, not revenge, rivalry, or humiliation. The archive door closed once more. This time, no one reached for the key. William left carrying responsibility. Harry left with painful understanding. Meghan left with a new path. Diana's dignity remained intact because her consent still mattered. The palace had denied one request, but in doing so, it restored something far more important: Diana's right to remain the owner of the parts of her story she never chose to give away. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.